Hey guys, thanks for checking out this Daggerheart Playtest 1 rules review. I'm going to be playing this game tomorrow night, so I've been digging into the rules real deep. A lot of cool things here. I don't know if it's really quite the system for me, and I got a couple suggestions for things I would change, but a lot of really interesting stuff. So let's dive in here. Of course, it's a playtest, so there'll be lots of changes. They say there's going to be a change log. That will be handy. And they also say that once the game is public, you'll be able to publish supplements and other items for it. So that's cool. This is, of course, designed by Spencer Stark. Matthew Mercer's and the additional game designers there for credit. Creative director for Darrington Press, Travis Willingham. Table of contents has links to it, so that's handy. What is Daggerheart? A collaborative role-playing game set in a high fantasy world. Tools to tell a story that is both heartfelt and epic. So you're going to feel a little bit of Critical Role-esque, Matthew Mercer-esque writing in here, and I think the game world's going to be like that. What is a tabletop role-playing game? Well, we know what that is. What kind of role-playing game is Daggerheart? Heroic, narrative-focused experience with combat as a prominent aspect of play. Player-driven campaigns, exciting battles, and harrowing challenges. Rules light? I don't think. I think that's quite a stretch to say this is rules light. Free-flowing approach to combat, doesn't rely on grid-based movement for the maps and minis, so that's good that you can go either way. I would definitely tweak the free-flowing combat. We'll talk about that when we get to it. I kind of overall like the going back and forth between players and DMs. I first did that or experienced that in the MCDM system. I liked it. I thought that worked pretty good. It's asymmetric. Another thing I don't quite like. I like when the rules are pretty consistent worldwide, players, NPCs, etc. But the players roll 2d12 duality dice, and the GM rolls a d20. You have a listing of sources, a whole bunch of them here. Dungeons and Dragons for Advantage Disadvantage, Blades in the Dark and Apocalypse World for the character sheet development. Probably the strength of this game so far that I've seen has been the character sheet. Really well done. Enemy types and ways of managing minions are informed by Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition. And a shout out here to Flee Immortals, a good book there. Heart of the game. You take turns speaking at the table, describing what your characters do, the consequences of those actions, and how the narrative evolves because of those consequences. You have duality dice, 2d12, and you have damage dice, which varies by weapons. The duality dice should be of two different colors, one representing hope, one representing fear. You roll your dice and you take the sum of the two numbers. So you got 2d12, so your average roll is going to be a 13, ranging away from 2 to 24 on the dice. If your hope die is higher, you say you rolled with hope. If the fear die is higher, you say you rolled with fear. And if they're equal, you got a critical. And a critical is going to give you basically, if you're doing an attack, for example, you'll do your regular damage plus the maximum die added to it. So if you do d8 plus 2 damage, you'd roll that d8. Say you roll a 4, you add 2 more to that, so you got a 6. Then you add another d8 for a grand total of 14 on that roll. Each game of Daggerheart is called a session, and you put those together, you have a campaign, and you might have arcs within the campaign. So the most important rule of Daggerheart is that you make the game your own. They have some player principles here. These are pretty high level. I would recommend starting more as a beer and pretzels. Here's how you just jump into a game and play. I definitely like play to find out what happens. I think emergent gameplay is the best gameplay. Address the characters and address the players. So there's a lot of high level, touchy-feely world building, players working together, advanced stuff, I think. Not necessarily a beer and pretzels thing. Definitely has its place, but I'd definitely put the simple play first for players. World overview. The world is something that you are encouraged to build together. So if you like that thing, that's cool. I like a world that's complete and I'm exploring it and finding it as a player. Mortal realm. So you're gonna have a lot of pretty, it's gonna feel very Critical Role-y in the world. The world's created by the Forgotten Gods during the earliest stage, although I don't think this is the actual, what's the world? Exandria that they use for Critical Role. I think this is a new one. Created by Forgotten Gods during the earliest stage, overthrown by the new gods. You got the faint divinities, which are the lesser gods that are stuck here in the world. You got the Hallows above, claimed by the new gods. You got the circles below, where the fallen reside. It's, quote, deemed evil. I definitely like games that have hard evil in them that you, as heroes, are overcoming. Not a big fan of everything being nuanced. Some things can be nuanced that, that should be like the outlier, the surprise for the players, and you find a devil who's actually good. But definitely like a lot of evil foes to overcome. Realms beyond, countless realms beyond these, the elemental lands, the astral realm, the valley of death, etc. Character tokens. So They have these tokens for, adding up extra, keeping track of your modifier to hit. That seems a little cheesy to me. I don't know if this is maybe just a thing to sell merchandise. I don't think you need, I got +2 bonus. I can remember I got a +2 bonus. I don't need to throw 2 tokens on there to know that. The game cards they're fun looking, and certainly a lot of people I think will enjoy them. I'd just as well have the stuff on my character sheet, and it's also another merchandising angle here. But I bet a lot of people will like the game cards. They're definitely pretty. You can hand them to the DM if they need to see what you can do, etc. That is it for the intro. So, part 1, preparing for adventure. This is how you're making a character. So you're going to pick your class first, and probably the highlight that I've seen so far of the game system is the character sheets. They are really well done, and they're unique to each of the 9 classes, I think it is. The 9 classes, you're going to see a lot of these are going to look very familiar. There's a few new ones. Guardian, which is a little bit like it's like a barbarian, but a tank barbarian. Then you have a seraph, which is kind of like a cleric / paladin. And then you have a warrior, which is fighter. A lot of ancestries, really leaning in to the animal ancestries. A lot of these things were just kind of renamed of things from other systems. Clank would be like a auto gnome. Daemon would be like a tiefling. Draconian, very fun. Fungrill, which is a fungus creature. Galapa, which is a tortoise. Guattari cat. Ribbit frog. Simian ape. You got communities, 9 communities. This was a little disappointing. I'd like to see this expanded. In Daggerheart, you're not asked to pick specific languages. I think there's a lot of verisimilitude to have languages in a world. A living world's going to have a lot of languages, and a lot of people don't speak every language, but this says to assume that everyone speaks a common tongue and everyone understands sign language. So I'd like to see that expanded, definitely. Assign character traits. So you have 6 traits, which are the equivalent of ability scores. The modifiers actually to ability scores in 5th edition. And you'll see some familiar ones, well, one at least, strength. Then you have dexterity, seems to be split up between agility and finesse. You have instinct, which is like wisdom, presence, which is like charisma, and knowledge, which is like intelligence. Interesting, you have a constitution score. Your trait modifiers, you get it to distribute +2, +1, +1, +0, 0, and -1. So those are lower than you normally see in a D&D game, a 5e D&D game, but since you're rolling 2d12, you're going to have an average roll of 13, and it's not a bell curve, but it's definitely a curve, and you'll get more bang for your buck by the modifiers, so that I could see how they'd make them a little bit lower. Evasion. Okay, so you have your modifiers, and now let's say you're being attacked by a creature. The DM's rolling the d20, maybe adding 1, 2, 3, something like that to it. The DM will tell you what he hits, and you compare that to your evasion, and if he gets higher than or equal to your evasion, he hit you. Then you'll roll damage, and you'll, if you want, soak some of that damage into your armor, which you can do a number of times per day. And after that, you'll compare that damage to a threshold number to see how many hit points you take. And every character is starting with like 6 hit points, and they can go up as you gain levels. We talked about hope and fear. You have a proficiency, so all your weapons are going to do like a base die 8 or die 10 or die 12. And then as you gain proficiency, you get multiple dice. When you take damage, you can reduce it by your armor score. We talked about that. So everything is kind of abstracted as far as equipment goes and gold goes. You don't, go through the minutia buying every little thing, which some people like. I kind of like that. But you can talk to your GM about any other items you'd like to have. There aren't rules about your inventory, so it's definitely not an inventory dragging game for sure. You have a background you get to pick. You have experiences. So experiences is an odd and different thing. These are 2 things that you can say are experiences. It could be you're a swashbuckler, I'm a magical historian, or I'm a map maker, or I'm a bodyguard, or a con artist, etc. And you can spend your hope, which you collect every time you roll dice to make a check. If your hope is higher and you roll with hope, you collect hope up to a total of maximum of 5 hope. And if you spend a hope when you're making a check, you can use your experience. And like the regen characters all have experiences basically that go with either their spell attacks or their weapon attacks. So it's just an addition to that, which I kind of miss, the skill lists that are in 5e. So not too keen on the whole experiences section. We'll see how it plays. We'll see how it plays when we play the game tomorrow. Then you have domain cards. So these are like your class features that you get as you level up. They get better and better as you level up. You get to pick 2 level 1 cards from your class's 2 domains. And As you level up, you'll get to pick more and more cards. Eventually, you'll have more cards than you have spots for because you only have 5 spots. And you can basically swap out cards you have in effect as you're playing. Create your connections. So this is a nice little tweak in the character sheet. I'll look at the back of the sheet. They ask you some basic background questions and some connection questions. I think that's good to kind of get the party kind of mixed together. The character sheet, like I said, is nice. And there's a different character sheet for every class. So this one's for Sorcerer. Tells you what your 2 domains are, where you can pick your domain powers from. Tells you what your class features are. Gold, like we said, is abstracted. Here's your experiences, which you can add to a check. Here's your evasion, your armor. You can use it 3 times, and you can use more times as you gain levels. Here's your thresholds. So if you were to be hit for 0 or 1 to 2 damage, you would not take a hit point, but you'd instead take a stress. When the stresses are all used up, you would take a hit point. If you hit for 3 to 7, then you take a hit point, 8 to 12, 2, and 13 plus 3. And there's an optional rule where you could do 26 plus, you'd take 4 to make it even more deadly. You have your weapons and your proficiency marker there, which increases how many dice you use for your weapon. The ranges we'll cover in a little bit. Far range is 100 feet. You have your armor, which sets what the soak is for the damage you soak out before you check compared to your threshold. Some armor also can reduce things like your evasion. So plate armor might be -2 for evasion. Then on the back of your sheet, suggested trades, suggested weapons, suggested armor, inventory, character description things you can use, and then leveling up. So at level 2, you can take an additional experience and you choose 2 of the items below. These are things like add a hit point slot, add a stress slot, increase your proficiency. Once you pick 2 of those things, then increase your severe damage threshold by 2 and choose a new domain card, and you go up in levels. Then they have multi-classing starting at level 5. I don't think I'll cover that in this video. A little bit more advanced there, and I haven't got through reading that section yet. Domains. So each class gets 2 domains to pick their domain powers from. I really like the Codex domain, how the cards feel like miniature spellbooks. Here's an example of a domain card. So these cards, you could easily put them on a character sheet. In fact, even if you had 10 of them, you could just have 10 things listed of what they do with circles beside them and check the ones that you have in your loadout. Or you can use the cards. I'd probably do the former, but I think a lot of people they'll like the latter. So I think that's going to help sell the game for sure. Once you reach level 5, you'll have more cards than you have space in your loadout, so you can swap cards. The number on the top right is what stress you'd have to pay to swap cards. So you can swap them mid-game. You can swap them during a rest as well without spending stress. Like I said, the Grimoires, which come with the Codex domain, are pretty cool, like little mini spellbooks. You can use the cards as many times as you want. Some are just static modifiers, and some are powers that you can use. Some do have a limit, though, of once per day or once per short rest. Talked about how you can have 5 at one time, how you can swap them. Your class also has subclasses, and that will determine your spellcasting trait if you have a spellcaster. And they'll have a feature that comes with them, and then you get more features as you level up. And you have the classes here. So you get a Bard, Druid. I like how they have kind of thematic beast forms for the Druid. Guardian, Ranger. They have a similar thing to basically a Hunter's Mark for the Ranger. The Guardian's got things similar to Rage. One of the Ranger subclasses has an animal companion. The Rogue has this thing called Hide, where you move where no one can see you, you're hidden. You don't have to make a hide check, you're just hidden. Of course, I'd adjudicate that as a DM. It has to actually be something there. If someone comes around a corner, they don't see you unless you attack or you move. I would say you have to have shadows or something to hide, and you just can't be in plain sight for that to work. Rules as written, you could be in plain sight. The Seraph, the Cleric Paladin cross a little bit. You got prayer dice, you got a foundation feature that lets you fly. But I like how they implemented it. When you spend a hope, and remember that's a resource that you can have up to 5 of, you take flight until your next roll with fear. While flying, do an additional DA damage, blah, blah, blah. I like how that's implemented. Sorcerer, the channel raw power didn't look very powerful. The Warriors got the Battle Strategist, the Combat Training, the Wizard. This is kind of cool. Strange Patterns. Choose a number between 1 and 12. Anytime you roll that number on a duality dice, gain a hope or clear a stress. You may change this number on any long rest. I'm thinking of what was the movie 23 or something like that, where he's always seeing numbers. I could see a wizard doing that. Okay, here's your ancestry. So this gives you just one feature. No changes to traits or anything like that. Just one feature, basically. You got Clank, Daemon, Dracona, which gives a breath weapon, which does D8 magic damage to one enemy within close or a group. And the group of enemies is they're all within 10 feet of each other, basically, in close range. Then you got Elf, Fairy, Fawn, Furbolg, Bungrill, Galapa. Giant seems pretty powerful. Might need to tone that down slightly. Gain additional hit point slot at character creation. Any melee weapon you have has reach, or very close, which is 10 feet. Danger sense goblins. This isn't clear what it's talking about. Reduce the incoming value, I think, of damage, probably. Halfling looks like a little overpowered. And what do you do if you have multiples? At the beginning of each session, give everyone in your party a hope. If you have 2 halflings, does everyone get 2 hope? Can you see a whole party of halfling barbarians thinking Baldur's Gate? All right, then we got Katari, which is cat person, orc, ribbit, frog person, simian, ape or monkey person. And you can mix them. However you want to mix them, they just basically pick the ancestry from one of them. Community is like background, and they give you 1 feature. Usually something along the lines of advantage on some rolls. You can play with characters with physical disabilities. Talks about that a little bit. Part 2, get ready for adventure. So it talks a lot about the flow of the game here. What can you do on your turn? This is where I tweak things a little bit. They have no turns in the traditional sense. So generally players in the spotlight will have the chance to describe their move. And you can generally move 30 feet and do an action. There's no combat rounds to worry about. I don't like that. I think everyone should act 1 time before anyone acts a 2nd time, unless you have like a solo or something like that. Otherwise, weird things happen as the party, is outnumbered by a lot or outnumbers enemies by a lot, and the whole going back and forth with fear with a miss, interesting. Maybe it's okay to keep as long as you give everyone a chance to act 1 time before they act again. Okay, so you got your duality dice, rolling with hope, rolling with fear. Talked about what crit does. Using your hope, you can help an ally with it. Doesn't say if that's an action or not, but you grant them advantage, a d6. And you can utilize an experience. We talked about that. Activate a hope feature. So a lot of the domains say, spend a hope to do something. Utilize an experience. Do you do it before or after you roll? I think it's before you roll. You have to declare you use any experience. If you already rolled with hope, this is just a convenience thing. You don't need to mark off a hope because you just got one. So that's a net 0 change on hope. You can't do it multiple times. Here's the thresholds, which we talked about. You can take 1, 2, or 3 damage or stress. Covers that here. Clearing hit points, you do that during downtime. Here's the optional rule for taking 4 hit points of damage at 1 hit. Stress. Some powers use stress, or class features, or ancestry features. Action rolls. It talks a little bit more about experience and not using it over and over, but a lot of the samples seem to use it over and over. So that's interesting. That could use maybe a little bit clarify or consistency there. Again, tokens, rolling dice. This should be a rule, not a tip, because it is a rule. When an effect lets you choose whether to add dice to an action roll, such as choosing to use the Bard's Rally die, you must roll them at the same time as your other dice. Okay, so this is what you can get. You got your 2 duality dice. You can do either a check of some sort, or an attack of some sort, or a spellcasting roll of some sort. You can get a crit, which has all sorts of benefits, doing a lot more damage. You take a hope, you clear a stress. You can succeed with hope, so basically you get what you want and take a hope. Succeed with fear, there might be a complication and the DM gets fear. Fail with hope, at least you get hope. And fail with fear, the worst of all outcomes. Now, this I think could get old pretty fast if the DM has to come up with something every single time you roll with fear, which is half the time. Some big complication or something like that. So I don't know if I like all that. Just taking fear and moving on often could be the more fun way to play. I think it's funner, at least in my experience, when players get to act more often and quicker. Okay, so you got trait rolls, you got attack rolls, you got unarmed combat rolls. So unarmed combat uses strength or finesse, does d4 damage. Actually, and it doesn't go up by your proficiency, it only goes up by half your proficiency. Spellcast rolls, and if they're intended to damage targets, also an attack roll. Spell effects might have temporary effects. So you can impart a condition like restrained on a creature, and the DM can get rid of that using a fear die. If it's a creature attack affecting a character or player, there'll be something in the description that says how to get rid of it. Tag team rolls. So you can spend 3 hope, team up with another PC. You'll put 2 action tokens in the, what's it called? The action tracker. And you both attack, you take whichever set of attacks you want to use, and then you add up all the damage together. So it'll generally turn out better than attacking separately. Damage rolls, calculating damage, damage types. You have basically physical and magical damage. Direct damage, they don't have to make an attack roll to hit. Resistances and immunities, so resistance divides the damage in half, rounding up. Reaction rolls is basically something happening in combat. Another character can't help you on a reaction roll. Everything is happening so quick that you'll have to handle it alone. NPC reaction rolls. GMs can also make reaction rolls when prompted by a PC's abilities, and we'll look at some monsters in a second. Evasion score, that's what the monsters need to hit a character. Advantage gives you an extra d6. Disadvantage, you subtract a d6. They cancel 1 for 1, not 1 for all, like they do in 5th edition. Here's our conditions. So vulnerable. It means that they are now temporarily in a difficult position, knocked over, struggling to keep their balance, etc. The players and GM should work together to describe it. While vulnerable, rolls against them have advantage. You got hidden, you got restrained. So there's only a few conditions described so far. Vulnerable, hidden, restrained, and how to end it. Temporary, other, some moves apply other conditions. You have countdowns. Okay, here's range. So range is melee, this is adjacent. Very close is 10 feet, close is 30 feet, far is 100 feet, very far is 300 feet. And they also give you some other ways to measure this if you're not using your grid. So very close would be the short edge of an index card. Close would be a pencil. Far would be, they say a sheet of paper, but that'd only be 50 feet. So I think they probably should do 2 sheets of paper for far. That'd give you 100 feet. And then very far then would be 6 sheets of paper. Or you could just say the whole table. The movement, I think, needs to be clarified a little bit. I think you can, and we'll look at the difficulties here in a minute, but I think you can roll a check to go a long ways, but you should always be able to go close and do an action. You should be able to do close and then close again and not do an action. Some clarity there would be good. Targets, we talked about how a group is any creatures who are clumped together in a common area no further than very close range from each other, 10 feet from each other. When you're attacking multiples, you roll attack roll once, and you roll the damage roll once. Cover gives disadvantage. You have to have line of sight. Gold, like we say, is abstracted to handfuls, bags, chests, hoards, and fortunes. You have downtime, so you have short rests where you can do 2 of these things. You can clear some hit points, some stress, some armor slots, gain a hope. Long rest, all hit points, all stress, all armor slots, gain a couple of hope. I like their death. I was surprised to see this, how finalized it is. You can embrace death and go out in a blaze of glory, auto crit with your next action, and then die. Avoid death, but when you do, you might take a scar. You roll a fear die, d12. You gotta roll under your level, or you take let's see. Then you roll a fear die. If its value is equal to or under your level, take a scar. So at first level, it's only a 1 and chance 12 of taking a scar. But at 10th level, it's 10 and 12. And when you have scars, on the next page, we see that it reduces your maximum hope. So real quickly, that character will be pretty hamstringed. The other option is to risk it all and either come back fighting if you roll high hope, or die if you roll high fear. So I like those options. That's cool. Flow of combat, no initiatives, no rounds, no distinct number of actions. So I would tweak this. I'm going to play it. Probably not exactly as written. I'll probably make sure everyone gets a chance to act. Players are encouraged to give each other's turns. I'll make sure they do in the spotlight. I don't like this burden being placed on the DM to be the adjudicator of making sure that players get to go. I would definitely tweak that. Whenever you take an action, you're going to put a token on the action tracker. And once you miss a check or roll with fear, then the GM gets a turn and the GM spends tokens off the action tracker to take the actions of their creatures. So pretty straightforward, pretty simple. A lot of tracking this stuff off and on the action tracker. I'll see how that runs tomorrow. That's about the scope of how far I really delved into the rules here. So, see, I got a couple more. Throwing weapons. There are some specific throwing weapons, like a throwing axe, but you can throw like a dagger or a non-throwing axe. Does half damage, though, and the range is very close. I would think that should change that to close, maybe. Then we have some examples of the weapons. You can see they're doing, from anywhere from D8 to D12 plus 2. And this is level 1 weapons. And then as you level up, they get better. A little bit more damage. Level up again, a little bit more damage. Level up again, all the way to max, D10 plus 8. And by the time you're at this level, your proficiency is probably pretty high. It can go up to, I think, 6. So you could be doing 6 D10 plus 8. So a lot of damage at the high levels. Still, the most damage you can do to a creature is 3 hit points with 1 hit. And you can see they also have some interesting things. Wand of Essex, knowledge, far range, D12 plus 4 magic damage, one-handed, time bender, -1 to agility. You may choose the target of your attack after making your attack roll. So some cool things in there. These are all, I guess, samples basically of magic items that might be in the game. Armor gets better as you go up, and here you can see the effects of armor. So full plate can soak 9 damage, but it is -2 to evasion, -1 to ability. So you're going to get hit more often, for sure. And once you soak up 3 times, you're out of luck. So that could turn ugly depending on how long your sessions go, which is not necessarily good for trying to balance a game. That's going to be a little difficult for the DM to know. Armor goes up with levels, and you get some magical armor. Blade Fair armor 9. Physical, you cannot use this armor against magic damage. Interesting. Then you have some magic items of various sorts. Ring of Silence. Spend a hope to activate this ring until your next short rest. Your footsteps are silent. Sharp Relic. Add +1 to your knowledge. You cannot hold any other relics. Got some consumables. Gill Salve. You can breathe underwater for a number of minutes equal to your level. Nice. Okay, then they got a full example of play. And then part 3, running an adventure. So a whole bunch of GM guidance. A lot of GM guidance here. Wow, goes on and on and on. So the GM does roll a d20 instead of 2d12. The GM should take a move anytime the players roll with fear, roll a failure, take an action that has consequences, give you a golden opportunity, or look to you for what happens next. Here's the things you can spend fear on. Do something big, take a countdown, use an adversary's fear move, take advantage on a roll, in an effect, clear a condition, add more damage, add 2 tokens, interrupt a PC taking an action. You definitely want to use that up. Your maximum fear is 10 right here. And you start with 2. And interestingly, you carry this all between sessions, and the players carry hope between sessions. Attack rolls, difficulty checks. So average roll on 2d12 is 13. A +2 modifier for a high trait would be 15. So 15 is the medium DC. These are easy to remember, 15, 20, 10. I would maybe take the 5 very easies out and just say those are automatic. Even 10s maybe. Just because you don't want people making a lot of rolls in this game. Otherwise they're building up a lot of fear. Yeah, unnecessary rolls I would think you'd want to avoid. So with a 15, an average roll and leaping, you can jump 10 feet. I would say a 5 feet should be automatic. Yeah, get rid of the 5 and get rid of the 10, I would say. What's another example here? Charm, win the trust of a cautious stranger. Talk your way into a noble's party, 15. Okay, now let's look at adversaries. So the monsters you're fighting. As a character, you're probably going to be a +2 to hit. You might use your experience if you spend a hope to get another +2, so you might be +4 to hit. You're going to be trying to hit the difficulty of the monster you're attacking. If you hit it, then you're going to do damage to it. And the thresholds here, some monsters don't have stress at all, I've noticed, in which case their minor threshold is 1. If you do any damage, you do 1 hit point. This one, if you did 1 damage, it would only take a stress, not a hit point. And monsters have experiences too, but they act to offset what a player does. It talks about that down here. And then they'll have some moves beyond the basic move, of course, is to move up to your 30 feet close distance and attack 1 time. They have various special things. Relentless can do multiple activations on a GM move. So normally they say only have a creature go 1 time on your move. Like I said, I think it'd be better to change it so everyone goes before anyone can go again. But then this would be like solo or elite, who can go multiple times before everyone goes again. Slow means they take multiple action tokens to activate. Minions, hordes, group attacks, bunch of different creatures. Talks about countdowns, character and character adjudication. Oh, character versus character adjudication. So here's where I like games that are symmetric, where the rules are the same for everyone. There's a higher level of verisimilitude, I think, in that, and I think this game could get there. With a little bit of tweaking, I think it could get to that. I think that's a good thing. So a whole bunch of examples, running a session. And this game really leans into the players being part of the building of the world. So if you like that, that's great. If you don't like that, I think you can pretty much just ignore it and do it however you like. The world, running a campaign. So I think the world's going to be pretty thematic of a Critical Role campaign and Matthew Mercer's work. I think we're going to see a lot of things that feel like that in the world. I like a little bit, they give some examples of moments of hope and moments of fear. That's really handy in a game where you're having to come up with things that happen on fear all the time. In fact, there should be like a whole quick reference sheet of this put together of these things. Then you have monsters and such, but let's go past the world and we'll get to a lot more monsters. So you can see there's a lot of stuff. This is a playtest and it's got huge content for the world. Surprised that all made that in there. Okay, here's some level 1, tier 0 adversaries. So you got kind of generically defined jagged knife. So is that Could be a kobold, could be a goblin, whatever you want to use in your world, really. You got the Jagged Knife Bandit, +0, 2d8, 2, 8, 14. There you go. You got, let's look at tier 0. Jagged Knife Lackey. Here's a minion. So minion has difficulty 9 to hit, and if you hit him, that's it. Minion 3, so for every 3 damage you deal to the adversary, you also deal 1 hit point to an additional minion within your attack's range. That could kind of be weird if they're like in all different directions, you're shooting a bow. You would think you'd want them to be close to each other, and maybe that is a rule that I just missed. Swarm of Rats, Giant Scorpion. Here's something that spends fear to do stuff. So that's, in a lot of different creatures. Spends fear, spends fear. So there you go. Here's, let's look at skeletons. A standard skeleton warrior. So you'll see this a lot, where the first tier, threshold for damage is 1, and they have 0 stress. So if you do any damage, you do a hit point to them. 4 or more, you do 2. 8 or more, you kill them. And then you'll see some monsters that have like 2 hit points. I don't know if I see any here or not. Where if you do a certain amount, you're just going to kill them outright. Now let's look at the high tier monsters. Get a good idea what that looks like. Outer Realms Monstrosities. Outer Realms, Abomination, Bruiser, Demolish, Undermine, Warp. I'm thinking like a type 2 demon. Attack modifier D8, so random attack modifier. That's interesting. Massive Pseudopod, so it's not like a type 2 demon. Difficulty 21 to hit. Severe damage is 72. So you can see that, when that character's got high level, they're doing like 6d8 plus something. Well, they might need that much to do that severe damage to a creature like this. 11 hit points. This will be fun to try this out, play this out. Part 5, and that's the end. So, overall, Daggerheart. Interesting. Very interesting. There's going to be a lot of minutia with the hope and fear. This might be a lot of work on the DM. It's written at a very high level. I would start at a lower level and then expand from there. Definitely not rules light. I don't think I'd say that. The combat I'd tweak so everyone gets an action before they cycle around to do more actions. Experiences, I don't know if I might want to go back to skills, but I'm looking forward to playing it. There's definitely interesting things here. Don't know if it is going to win me over from the preferred games I have, D&D, Shadow Dark. I loved MCDM, but I always liked the tactical stuff. So we'll see. We're going to play it, and I will. I'll put a link to the play video that I release here soon in the description below. So what do you think? Let me know. Let me know in the comments what you think of Daggerheart, especially if you've played it, and if you think anything I said here resonates to experiences you had when you were playing. Thanks for watching.